So excited to introduce you to Eric Degatti today. We are going to hone in on the three big things you need to do to optimize your health, function, and performance. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me, Lindsay. This is something I'm looking forward to.
Oh, me too. I would love for you to just let our audience know a little bit about yourself and all of your expertise.
Okay. So at heart, I'm a strength and conditioning coach, fitness professional. Been doing that for just over 20 years. And if you're trying to do the math, I started when I was 5. With that, I've gotten the opportunity to do some pretty cool things along the way, whether it's working individually with people, helping them achieve their goals, or working with teams and groups, as well as educating other fitness professionals and strength coaches and physical therapists around the world. Teaching first for a company called Functional Movement Systems, which is a method of evaluating movement and looking to address any flaws that we find within that, and being able to teach that around the world. And as well as working with teams. And a lot of my niche is within athletics, and specifically baseball and football, and work with multiple NFL teams. Worked with the New York Giants for 9 years, and so gotten to work with professional athletes across the spectrum, helping them kind of be their best and stay healthy.
Okay, so you've seen professionals. I do love this spectrum that you have going on here. You have the average Joe and you have the professionals and everything in between. What do you feel like there's this common thread, even with that big span of knowing all of that? Do you feel like there's something that you notice people are constantly coming to you and either asking or wanting?
Well, the funny thing is the approach is the same. It's just the end destination is different, right? So the approach is the same in terms of, let's look at their, for the easy low hanging fruit of their strength and conditioning, is that first I have to check some boxes. I need to make sure that you move well before we go and challenge your movement, because you can't even touch your toes or rotate or do some simple things. Then adding more stress to that, whether it's speed or lots of reps or lots of weight, is only going to make that worse. And so I have to check that box first. And then from there, how far we continue down that path really depends on, well, where do you need to get to? Do you need to get to where I just want to be able to play a round of golf on the weekend or some casual tennis? Do I want to be able to just work out without being in pain? Or do I need to be able to chase down a receiver that runs a 4.40 and then get in a car crash when I get there, right? So it's just a matter of where that end destination lies. But the approach from the beginning and the principles don't change. It's just a matter of how far down the rabbit hole you need to go. So I always look at in addressing it, and I say, and you mentioned before, 3 big things. And then each one of those 3 things has another 3 things. And each one of those 3 things has another 3 things. And how far you go down that rabbit hole really is dependent on what your goal is. Right. So that's the only difference between the Major League Baseball player and the mom who just wants to be able to work out and not have low back pain and be able to have enough energy to get through the day.
Right. And I don't know if you agree with this, but you mentioning there is this rabbit hole. I also think that's where individuals get lost, is within the rabbit hole, because they feel like they're starting here and they need to get way over here. And it doesn't mean that. It comes back to what you said there. Why? What do you ultimately want to do? If you just want to be able to get down on the floor and play with your grandkids, that's going to look like a lot different of a journey than, like you said, the football player. So you really start with, what would be the first initial 3 things again? Go through
Okay.
exactly.
All right. So
if I was
three big buckets. All right. The first is fuel. All right. And fuel can mean multiple things. Obviously, with your background in nutrition, that's the first place your head's going to go is, okay, obviously what you're putting into your body, it has a huge impact. Right. And there's so much murky water out there that if we could just take a step back and just have an adult conversation, you probably know what's right and wrong for the most part. And a lot of times we get into the weeds of the specifics when, if you just look, for the most part, if I ask people to write down a food log and then I say, okay, you tell me what was good or bad, they're usually on point for most of that stuff. They get lost in that last 20%. So obviously what you put in your body as far as your nutrients, making sure you stay hydrated, and not doing that with all sorts of other junk that a lot of people drink, whether it's, dessert in a cup that they call coffee, or it's soda or any other thing like that. And then the other part of fuel is what you put in your head and what you let in there. That's the TV you watch, the books you read, the people you hang out with, the social media that you get drained into. And so that is going to be a big factor in terms of your fuel that is either going to help you or hurt you. And, we have to compete with social media now as professionals that we didn't have to do when I started. And so now, like I joke with my son who's studying accounting right now, I said, the benefit you have is that you're not going to have to, when you graduate and get your degree, you're not going to go and have to compete with an accounting enthusiast, right? But I have to, and you and I have to compete with fitness and wellness enthusiasts online, and people have very slanted views of what that means. And so I take it a step further and say, as an accountant, no one would walk into your office and say, I want the Rock's financial plan. And be like, you're not a multi-billionaire. You're not in a movie every 6 weeks. Why would you think you could have his financial plan? But yet they'll come to me and say, I want to do the Rock's workout. And it's like, do you understand the Rock was a Division I athlete? Do you understand he's a freak? Why would you think you can do that and out of the gates, or why that would even be something part of your goal? So like having that realization. So fuel is the first part, your nutrition, your hydration, and what you put into your head. Second piece is moving. Okay. Obviously you got to move, right? But that means a lot of different things. So first you got to move well. Like I said, you got to be able to do some fundamental things. Can you be able to bend down? Can you squat? Can you do a simple lunge? Can you twist? Can you have, good shoulder mobility? All these basic fundamental things. Can you do fundamental movement before we go and challenge it? So you got to be able to move well, right? And that's not something we talk a whole lot about. It's just, we look for what cool exercise or what cool method of, I heard Pilates is good. I heard yoga is good. I heard, all these different things. They all can be good in their place, and it all could be the right thing for the right person. But you got to be able to move well enough that you can actually accept that challenge. Mm-hmm. The next thing is we need to get strong, and strong is again relative. Strong is, relative to whatever your goal is, but you need to have a certain baseline of strength. Strength is what keeps us up and able to sit upright and walk throughout the day and not, hang on our joints and do all those kind of things. So you need to build strong enough to endure whatever environment you're putting your body into. And so that's the next step is in terms of strength. And then you need to have some level of capacity. And that capacity is you're going to run a marathon, or you need just to be able to walk around the block. You need to have some level of capacity that your body can tolerate some things that you don't get out of breath going upstairs or raking leaves in your backyard. So those are our three subcategories of move. Okay, you got to be able to move well and have good movement. You got to have a baseline of strength. You have to have a baseline of capacity, and then you can get specific to whatever goal you need. Okay. The last thing is the reset piece. And this is a piece that nobody really talked about, especially when I got started talking about the reset piece, and that your training or working out is only as good as your ability to recover from that workout, because it's stress. Basically, in the simplest terms, I'll give you all the years of exercise science in about 3 seconds here. Basically, you challenge your body and he goes, holy crap, I don't know what you just did. But if you're going to keep doing that, Lindsay, I have to adapt. That's how every cell in our body has survived to this point, is that if it was cold, we'd shiver to warm up. If it was hot, we'd sweat to cool down. And so if you lift up some heavier things, your body can say, well, I better get a little bit stronger. If you go out and start walking or running, it's going to say, well, I better get a little bit more cardiovascular fitness. So if I start doing this mobility work every day, I'm going to have to adapt and be able to be better at moving through these positions and postures and shapes. So that's simply what happens. You stress it and it adapts, and it comes back a little bit stronger, specific to whatever it is that you did. And so with that, the training is not where the magic happens. The training is what happens after that. So I say the training are the seeds, right? I always tell everybody that what I'm going to give to you in terms of your training or program is just seeds. You are providing the soil, okay? And as a farmer, your seeds are only as good as your soil. So if I try to plant seeds in concrete, they're not going to go anywhere, all right? Concrete is someone who doesn't sleep well, that is constantly stressed out, that has poor nutrition, doesn't breathe well, all these different things. And they don't give me a fertile environment for the workout to work. So I can have a great workout that's going to have no impact on you because you aren't giving me fertile soil to plant those seeds in. And so with that, how do we reset our body to have fertile soil? Well, the number one, by far is sleep. Okay. And I don't know if you're like me, but I'm a complete Audible junkie. I am an audiobook freak, where I probably crank through 15 to 20 a year. And if there's one I could recommend for everybody that will impact, I've had multiple people tell me that completely changed their lives is a book called Why We Sleep. Okay. And it's by Dr. Matthew Walker. He's one of the leading sleep scientists in the world. And he talks about why the impact that sleep can have on our lives. And it is mind blowing what it is. Okay. So sleep is so important that now we have different tracking devices to look into sleep, whether it's an Aura ring or any of these things, because it's so impactful that it's now, it's not only for the common person with things like that, but it's in professional sports, that there's a guy who makes his profession, and his whole job is in European soccer to go ahead of the team and set up each player's room for the optimal sleep environment. That is his entire job. And that's how impactful sleep is. Okay. So sleep is the number one thing. I can't out train a poor night of sleep. Yeah. The second thing is have some level of adaptability, meaning that you can react to environmental stress, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, any of those things. You're not someone that can't adjust, right? You have to be able to have that adaptive. The more robust you are as a system, the more you can adapt it to environmental and chemical stressors. That the more robust you are, you can have a slice of pizza or beer or a cheat meal or whatever, and it's not going to have a huge impact. But the sicker you are, the less adaptable you are, the more impact that's going to have. There's a great quote I saw from a medical doctor that said, I was younger, I ate fast food all the time, and I'm pretty sure it had a really bad effect on my health. He said, now I eat fast food every once in a while, and I'm pretty sure it has no impact on my health. Right. So it's a matter of how adaptable you are, how robust you are. So having that adaptability. And then the last piece is quiet, right? You have the ability to be quiet, and I can break that down into subcategories. So physical quiet is basically being free of pain. Right? Pain is noise in the body. It's your body's way of kind of complaining, saying something's wrong here. You're doing something to yourself, whether it's you don't have enough mobility or stability or just movement quality or strength or capacity. And every time that you go up the stairs, that's why your knees hurt. Right? So that is a lack of quiet physically. You have a lack of quiet physiologically. Well, that's disease. That's sickness. That's your body saying that, you've weakened yourself to where I can't fight off these stressors that are there every day. We're exposed to this every day. It's just a matter of, did that thing land on something that was weak enough that it could do something with? And that's physiological pain or dis-ease, is that lack of quiet within our physiology. And then you have your mental, quiet is the ability to just shut things off. We have so much bombarding us between social media and TV and work and and now that, especially COVID has just exacerbated everything that we're talking about. And so now, you used to have a separate space where you got up, you went to work, and then when you got home, work was for the most part over for most people. But now people are accessible, and people think, well, there is no difference. My workstation is the dining room table, and so I'm accessible. And now that adds a whole nother layer of lack of quiet in your life. And so another great book I'll recommend is Stillness is the Key. I recommend that to everybody, is the ability to just to shut that off, to be able to quiet that down. And so that is something that I highly recommend is being able to, whether it's through meditation or whether it's just through some breathing techniques. That's another thing I highly recommend. So that kind of breaks down our three things to reset. So you got fuel, you got move, you got reset.
Wow. Okay. First of all, beautiful job. You can tell you're a public speaker because I love the visions that you put with all of this. It really gives clarity on what you're talking about. I will say, let's go back through that a little bit and chunk it apart, because let's say you take that client through and you're trying to plant that seed in cement, and sleep is a real issue. Like, you feel like you can't get to that next part of the puzzle until that client is willing to really work with you on that area. Is that kind of what I'm hearing out of you?
1,000%. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the first goal of everything that I do with someone is to create greater awareness. Like, a lot of times we're not aware of these things. And the first goal is greater awareness. And so sometimes it's a matter of just, if they get themselves an Aura ring or a Whoop band and having that awareness that, wow, the days that I have better sleep, my workouts go better, that my, nagging shoulder, stiffness isn't there as much, that it takes a lot more to get my heart rate up. All those things are things that the tech now allows us to become more aware of some of these factors. So that's one of the big things. And then getting them to take ownership of it and understand and really appreciate. And that's why it's really, it's much more of an education and than it is a training of saying, here, do this for this many reps and magic stuff's going to happen. It's getting them to understand. And the same conversation that I'm having with you is the same conversation I would have with somebody that came to me. And then my job is to find where is the weak link in all of this, right? And that's where we have to focus on. So yeah, we may do your movement testing and you have a little bit of lack of range of motion in your ankle, but that doesn't matter if you drink no water throughout the day and your hydration is your biggest issue. So that's going to be our primary focus. So with sleep, it's creating awareness through whether it's tech feedback, whether it's getting them to read that book and say, do you have, that's why I've said so many people say it impacted them so much, because it's something that a lot of people struggle with and they don't really talk about. And they're either using CPAP machines or they're using medications to help them sleep, or they're just constantly never settled. They never feel rested. And so getting them to learn simple patterns, whether it's behavioral things that they can do to help with their sleep, of shutting off the iPad before they go to bed, or different things they can do, whether it's a warm shower. And I have a whole sheet of tips that I give them for things that they can do as far as routine to help their sleep behaviors. And so that is where we take someone who that's their biggest stumbling block and get them aware and get them to change their habits, get them to change the profile of what a day might look like.
Yeah, and I think you're giving a beautiful example of there's so many times that we're all guilty of saying like this is just something we know we should do, and forgetting to really give all the detailed examples of why. And I'm going to utilize you today for this. So when we tell people you should really stay hydrated throughout the day, where do you go ahead and give them all the nitty-gritty details of why on that?
Well, hydration is the, our body's, primarily water. It's the foundation of every cellular function in your body. And so with that, we have to make sure we hydrate ourselves well, and water is the king of that. And so we need to make sure that we're getting enough water throughout the day. And sometimes it's just awareness. They say, oh, I just don't think about it. And say, okay, well, let's have a goal for that. And our goal is we're going to get a water bottle that you can refill, and we'll put a mark on it. And you have to get to a certain thing each day. And that's our win for today. I don't care if you don't do anything else. That's what you need to focus on today. And then what happens is once they start doing that, it becomes second nature. And now it's just part of their behavior, and they don't have to think about it all the time. So, but the first step is the same thing as the awareness to realize that we need to make this just part of a routine. And that's probably the biggest thing, is just establishing habits that this is the non-negotiables of what you do in the course of your day. There is an industry that blows ours away. And if we could steal even a fraction of what they've done, we would be much more successful in the health and fitness and wellness space. And that is the American Dental Association. And no one has ever complained to me that, you know what, I just don't have enough time in my day. If I didn't have to brush my teeth twice a day and get so much more done. But we don't think of that. It's the only thing that we do preventative in advance to make sure bad things don't happen. Now, here's the thing, is that the reality is that you could probably go a couple days, maybe weeks, and there may be nothing that happens to your teeth, right? Just like you could probably go a couple days, not weeks, without exercising, and you're not going to implode or fall apart. But because we don't want to take that risk, and the numbers are much more in my favor if I brush twice a day, that I just do it. I don't think about it. It's just part of my habits. And the same thing could be done if we were to do a 5-minute meditation, a 10-minute mobility routine, a 10-minute walk in the morning or before dinner. Those things could just as easily be like brushing your teeth, but you just haven't made it a non-negotiable part of your day. And so with that, we don't have to negotiate with people to brush your teeth. We have to negotiate with people to give 10 minutes for something else. And then I always say, if I audited your day, I bet you I'm finding 10 minutes all over the place. And so I actually had this heart-to-heart conversation with a client the other day. He's been struggling with a shoulder issue. And I've given him, I don't know how many times I've given the same routine of mobility that he needs for his shoulder. And every time we do it, his shoulder mobility improves and his shoulder feels better. Yeah. And he said to me, I'm still dealing with the shoulder problem. And then I said, and we put him through it again. And I said, we just improved your shoulder feels great now. I said, you don't have a shoulder mobility problem. You have a priority problem. You need to, until you make this a priority, we're going to keep going back through this same cycle. And so it's just not a priority. It's just not part of what you want to make your day. And as soon as you make it a priority, this thing's going away. Right. Sometimes it gets so far down that we need somebody, a physical therapist, a chiropractor, somebody that can get their hands in and fix that. If I can fix it in 10 minutes of exercise, you're not there, but you're going to get there if you just keep ignoring it. Once you make this a priority, it's going to go away.
Yeah. And then I think it's just for some individuals knowing I might need to go pay somebody to be my accountability to do this, because then it becomes a priority for that reason that we just committed to it on our calendar. We're willing to put money behind it. And so many people feel like, why would I pay somebody to do something I can already do? But the reality is it because then we'll do it. It's that accountability piece. So I love that you're saying that. I'm going to play client for a second for you. If I were coming to you and saying, Eric, there's no way I'm not giving up my liquid dessert in a cup. What if I come to you pretty stubborn with a lot of I'm not changing this, but where do you go with that client?
Okay, so there's going to have to be a trade-off somewhere, right? Because if number one, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And so I'm going to need to have a trade-off somewhere. So what's going to be our trade-off? And so we know that there is a certain amount of chemical stress that you're getting from the sugars that you're going to have to process. There's a certain metabolic stress of the extra calories that you're putting in. But that's giving you comfort in some way. If we could ideally replace that comfort with something else, whether it's tea or something like that, that I can get you to try, that would be my first goal. But if I absolutely cannot, that's the hill you're going to die on with your frothy coffee, fine. I'm not going to fight this battle. We're just going to have to do something else to make it part of, if I'm going to have coffee, then I'm going to have to do this, right? And I'm going to have this activity. And so if that means you need to walk to the coffee shop, right? If you're in the environment that you have to do it, or for that, there's going to be some sort of trade-off with that. That means, well, if you're going to do that, that means that you can't go wrong the rest of your meals. So if we look at your food log of what you eat throughout the day, I tell most people that it comes down to percentages. And that I have two type of people. I have people that come to me that have a specific deadline. I have a tryout. I have a certain specific goal. I have a vacation, wedding, that type of thing. A specific deadline that they're not moving it. They're not changing the start of the season for me. So I have to be ready by that date. Okay, that's going to alter your percentages a little bit. Then there's other people that say, I want to get to this goal, whether it's feel better, look better, perform better, or all the above. I don't have a specific date. Obviously, the sooner the better. I tell them, okay, if you follow what we ask you to do 80% of the time, the other 20%, you can get away with whatever you want. Okay. Now, so what that means is if you're eating, 3 to 4 meals a day, including snacks over the course of the week, let's just make that easy math. And that means that there's, 20 to 25 meals you're having throughout the week. If you do your math on that, that means you can have 2 or 3 meals that whatever your vice is, that's going to be your vice. But the deal is those other 18 or 19 better be good. And so you're going to track your food, and then we're going to look at it, and then we're going to see where your percentages actually lie. Now, if you want to use, and the way I describe it, the way to manage it from a mental standpoint is I say you're going to start every Monday morning with, if let's say we're allowing your percentage is going to be 20%, let's say we're going to give you 5 magic tickets, and those tickets you can cash in for whatever your vice is: pizza, ice cream, frothy coffee, right? Don't go out Monday morning for, ice cream and waffles because you've blown them all on Monday morning and now you got no budget for the rest of the week. Now, as you go through the week, if you get in a situation where you're really dying for that coffee because you're super stressed out, or you're out in a social situation at a business meeting or something, don't stress out or be the eyeball in the corner sucking on a dry lettuce leaf. Like, enjoy whatever you're going to have and just cash in a ticket and don't stress out about it. And then if you get to the weekend and you got a couple tickets left over, then go out and have dinner and dessert and enjoy whatever you have. But that balance zeroes out on Sunday night, and you got to start again on Monday. Now, if you choose to use your ticket on that coffee, that's fine, but that means you don't have that budget for maybe that dessert that you wanted later, or the budget for this. So if that's going to be your choice, understand that every choice is going to have that consequence. And so what are you going to give up in return? Because you only have this margin of error. And if we find we're not getting there fast enough, guess what? Your percentage changes. Now you only get a 10% margin of error. And that allows people to understand where it's livable, that this is something I can do. This is not a 8 week, thing where I go all in, and then the next 8 weeks I spend putting it all, giving it all back. All right. So that's that way they can see it's livable.
Yes. No, thank you for answering that. I kind of wanted to keep throwing this out because oftentimes our clients would be a little nervous to just be so blunt of things that either they're not willing to do or maybe they're embarrassed that they do. And you gave this great example. If we are transparent with each other from client to coach or to trainer, we can help with ideas. That whole idea of it's an exchange system. Go walk and get your coffee. Or I had a client who she really liked the bread basket at the beginning of her meal, and she also liked her drink, and we're like, pick, you get your alcoholic beverage or you get your piece of bread, but you can't do them both, and you can't add the dessert in at the end. Like, you've got to look at it like you're saying. And it helps to have other ideas flowing in there because it doesn't feel so strict. It's like you're giving permission, which is awesome. So thank you for that example. I really like it.
And on the flip side of that, there's going to be some times where you're going to be a little uncomfortable, where you really wanted to have that, where you're going to say, no, no, thanks, when someone brings a plate of cookies or whatever it is. And it's not because cookies are going to magically someday not taste good. They're always going to taste good. It's because you're going to have to sometimes be a little uncomfortable and say, as much as I want that, I'm not going to have that, because what doesn't challenge us doesn't change us. Just like you're going to go and exercise, and there's going to be some days you're not going to want to get up and go get on the bike or the treadmill, or you're not going to want to go work out. But those are the days when we really are going to get us over the hump and get to the next level, because you have to be able to get outside of your comfort zone a little bit. And that goes back to the adaptability. The people who are the most adaptable, most resilient, the most healthy, robust people are the ones who are really comfortable being uncomfortable. And they look for a reason to be uncomfortable in any one of these categories every single day.
So true. When you get asked to speak publicly, what are your favorite clienteles to go to, and what are you really honing in on?
That varies, because I've had the opportunity to speak in a bunch of different settings, and they've all had their different dynamics that were very cool. I'll give you some of the different ones that I've had, just to give you the range, just in going out and teaching FMS or some of these other things. So going out and teaching, I've gotten a chance to work with different fire departments and military. So the LA County Fire Department, these are like real life rescue heroes that are flying Black Hawks into wildfires, they have the ex-SEALs that are diving, that are divers and on missions. Like, these are super, super high level firefighters. And to see that one of the missing links they had was, and the same thing with the military, gotten to teach on 2 of the SEAL bases and multiple military bases around the country. And these people are such superheroes, but the challenge that they're finding is that they're breaking down preparing to be a superhero, not being a superhero, meaning that their training that they're actually doing is hurting them. And they never had the awareness that was what the problem was. Like, if you're going to get injured as a SEAL or as a high level firefighter, it should be in the line of work. And your training should make that less apt to happen. It should make you more robust and more durable. And unfortunately, and this is happening in not just military fire, it's happening in professional sports, and is that people's training is actually breaking them down. And then you take that down to the average Joe, like you said, is that we have this weird confluence of factors coming in now, where exercise has actually become a risk factor. Where people are getting hurt exercising. And so now what do? The doctor says I need to go exercise, or my jeans don't fit. I know you need to go exercise, but it hurts to exercise. So what do I do? All right. So that's part of a challenge. So speaking with groups like that, or even speaking in hospital systems and seeing that they're so focused on the healing process of seeing that, some of these things, we're doing these magical treatments as physical therapists and clinicians, that we're getting people to create, lack of pain and these sorts of things, but we're not seeing some major things that are creating this problem, right? I use lots of analogies, and it's like, if you came into me and I was going to be your running coach to help you run faster, but you have a thumbtack in your shoe, my drills don't matter a whole lot, right? If I don't matter, I can teach you all the greatest technique in the world, but if you keep stepping on the thumbtack, it's going to never get us to where we need to be. So being able to get people to have that awareness, to be able to remove the negative first, before they go and worry about what's the best method or principle or program that's going to get me where I need to go. So in terms of having those audiences, just creating awareness to be able to say, like I have a program, a course that I just created now with a colleague of mine on how to design programs for strength coaches and personal trainers and physical therapists. And our goal is that at least a half a dozen times in that course, you sit back and say, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, I didn't think of that. All right. And so little things that people that they take for granted, that they're missing, and just because they're not aware. And then once you become aware of it, it's like that reticular activating system that, like, you get a red car and all of a sudden it seems like there's red cars all over the road, and now you can't unsee it. And so there's little things like that are some of the coolest things that I like to bring up to people when I teach and when I train them and I work as a coach.
Yeah, I thought where you were going to go with health professionals is you see a lot of nurses, especially injuring themselves. And I could see this with chiropractors, with physical therapists, everyone who's at a quirky angle throughout the day. And this goes back to that functional fitness that you brought up in the very beginning, that we forget to train our bodies for what we're just our normal activity is in the day.
Yeah, that's just being the adaptability, right? And having the adaptability to survive your environment. So those aren't huge forces for the most part that they're dealing with, but you do it repetitively enough, it's enough to put stress that'll strain your joints. And so, I tell people that when you get braces on your teeth, they only apply 1 gram of pressure, but that pressure over time moves your structure and changes it. Well, that pressure over time of not having enough range of motion in your ankle, that moves that stress up into your knee. Now, all of a sudden, you go to the doctor and your knee is aching you. That came from just a little bit of lack of movement someplace else that created a problem up the chain. And so, unless you look at that functionally and understand the big picture, you'll go and you'll get your knee iced or heated or rubbed or poked or prodded or worse, operated on, but you never fix the real problem, which was your ankle. And now all of a sudden you're back and your knee is hurting you again. And you get very frustrated and you say, I don't understand why, or you blame your mom or your dad of having bad knees. That's unfortunately not as genetic as people think. And so there's usually a reason for it when some parts in your body start to break down and fail.
So are you a big believer that past injuries that are attended to, that we can't do that we cannot have past injuries just go away, that they always resurface at some point within our life?
It depends on how good you did a job of getting back to your baseline. And there's 2 big stats. Your 2 biggest your number 1 risk factor for injury is previous injury. Okay. Mm-hmm. And taking that a step further, when they looked at, and believe this is in the military, a colleague of mine looked at was another huge risk factor for injury, is that when a person didn't feel like they got back to 85% or higher of their original function, that those people were significantly higher at risk to get injured again. And so just being out of pain is not being 100% back to function. It's, and we accept less and less as we get older and just assume this is the way it's supposed to be. And, one of my biggest jobs with people in that bracket is to explain to them that no, that's nonsense. That's you don't have to resign yourself to a rocking chair. That's not what it needs to be. And the only reason that you would do that is because the people who do that, because they just don't know any better. They just assume that this is what it's supposed to feel like, that it's supposed to hurt every day, or that I'm supposed to have all these problems, and you really shouldn't.
Interesting. Let's slow down and say that all again. As far as, so the number 1 biggest cause for future injury is
previous injury. And so, but there's 2 issues with that. One is if your only marker for improvement is lack of pain, and unfortunately that's where we get left a lot of times in our medical system. You're only given a certain amount of visits. My brother's a doctor of physical therapy, and he tells me how many visits he gets to get someone from a really debilitating injury until he has to release them is minimal sometimes. And so his job is just to basically, and even within his scope of what the insurance can allow him to do, his job is to get back normalized range of motion and lack of pain. That doesn't mean you can get up and go play tennis again. Doesn't mean you can go, rake your leaves or do all the stuff you need to do throughout a day that you want to do. And so you give away a little bit of your function, a little bit of your life, and a little bit of how robust you are, and just assume this is my ceiling. Well, no, you just didn't take the next step to get your body where it needs to be. And so having too low of a bar in terms of our rehab is part of the problem with that. And then also looking at it from a very isolated, myopic view of that my shoulder problem is a shoulder problem, when really that shoulder problem could be coming from a myriad of other things. And it's usually not your shoulder. It's usually from a bunch of other things. And so unless we understand that, we end up poking and prodding and heating and rubbing and doing everything in the world to your shoulder. Shoulder feels a little better. And then we've all gone through this. I go to the therapist, the chiropractor, whoever, my shoulder feels a little better. And then a day or two comes back.
Yeah.
Well, because it's the shoulder's not the problem. And so we need to figure out from a functional perspective, something else is creating that stress. Unless you got checked into the boards, got tackled in a game, got, any of those things, this is your body just kind of breaking down, and there's something somewhere that's not doing its job. And so something else has to overwork. And that's the part that usually breaks down.
Mm-hmm. So who are your first line of referrals? There's so much out there. Myofascial release, there's chiropractor, there's therapist, there's our concierge therapist, physical therapist. Like, where do you kind of believe in it all, or do you have a line? Obviously, I think I heard you would like surgery to be last line of defense. So all those steps before that.
Yeah. So with that, I have, just like I have within what I can do when you're standing here in front of me, or if I'm coaching you remotely, I have a set of tools in my toolbox that I can use. I can use mobility, I can use stability, I can use strength, I can use any of these multiple factors. But just like that, when I can't access something because there is a limitation that goes beyond my scope, I have a set of tools as well that if I know, okay, well, this person would really benefit from someone who's really good with manual therapy. I have a couple go-to manual therapists, whether it be chiropractors or physical therapists. If this person really needs somebody that can coach them through their nutritional habits and kind of sift through, because they're so far removed as far as the education, awareness, and nutrition, that's where I'm going to steer them towards someone like yourself. If it's someone that has had a traumatic incident, and we need to really see that if this is something that is going to be able to be helped without surgical intervention, then I'm going to refer you out to a doctor who can do that type of thing. So it's kind of finding the right tool for the right fit, and finding based on knowing kind of where I think it may be, and then getting that insight from somebody from the outside who can confirm that that's actually the case, and can actually do something with that.
Yeah, and what you're confirming to our listeners too, it always comes back to individual journey, and that a coach out there can really help us fine tune, narrow in on that next step. Because I think that's overwhelming for a lot of people. They're like, I don't know where to try. I don't even feel comfortable calling around or finding this. So to have somebody else go, hey, I really think that this could really benefit you is huge. So for everyone going, and I think you're fabulous. I think you are outstanding and in your own category of excellence. So anyone who's trying to reach out to you, what can you provide virtually, in person, all of it?
So in terms of direction, the first place I tell people to go is on my website, because I go out and teach all over and do things like this. Is that on my website, the first page, I created an Ask Eric section where you can just pop in a question that goes direct to my email, and I'll get back to you in a couple of days and kind of give you some direction, and then steer you towards who or what might be the right answer, at least for you to get started, or ask the right questions. And so if you ask me a question, I guarantee you're getting 5 back. Right. And so and a word of warning to anybody that's going to go out and get encouraged by this. And they say, all right, Lindsay finally got me to get over. I'm going to finally call and get a coach or a trainer, whoever it may be. Here's things you want to look for. Right. They should ask you more questions than they give you answers, especially in the beginning. All right. Because if you told me right now, Lindsay, write me a training program, I have no idea what I would do with you right now. I really don't. And so with anything I give you right now is just showing you exercises. And when, to your point earlier, you just need exercise, go on YouTube, they're free. I used to tell my staff when I owned my own training facility is that if you're just showing exercises, you're robbing people, because I can get that for free on YouTube. I don't need that. Right. Mm-hmm. But you need to also know how they answer your questions. If they answer you with a definitive, I got the solution for you, and I'm the only one that has that solution, then run for the hills, right? The more I do this, the more I answer the same 2 answers. I don't know. And it depends, right? Because if you say, well, why does my ankle hurt? I don't know. Now, until I do an assessment of your range of motion, of your stability, of looking at your exercise history, your training history, your medical history, until I look at all those things, I have no idea why your ankle hurts. After I do all that, and I'll spend probably close to an hour on someone's first day just evaluating them and going through all this information, then I have a really good idea of what's probably going on. And then what I'm going to do is then I'm going to give you some interventions and see if they work. Because at that point, I have a pretty good guess of 20 years of screwing it up that behind me, that I have a pretty good guess of what I think will work. But the only way I'm going to know is if I can retest that. So when you go to somebody and they don't give you some sort of baseline to work off of, and then from there have a way to check their work, then there's no accountability on their part. Well, if I'm going to be hiring you as my coach, you're going to make me have to be accountable. I should have to be able to hold you accountable a little bit. If you're hiring me and you're I had guys in this morning that are guys who are professional baseball players, right? And so if you're hiring me to get you to throw a baseball a lot harder or be able to hit or throw a lot faster, I better be able to give you some metrics that shows that this is actually working. And that's not even just for you, but it's for me to see, am I doing the right thing? I'm not wasting both of our time doing stuff that's not going to give us feedback. But that also requires that I have to put my ego to the side and realize sometimes we're going to try some stuff and it may not work. And I'm okay with that. All right. So understand that I got, a bunch of good guesses under my belt that I think I'll get you there faster. But ultimately, it's going to depend. And it's going to depend because I also don't know. We might have done the perfect program for you, but then you go home and you don't give me fertile soil for those seeds to grow. And so that's why this is a process and a journey that someone has to go through, but they have to make sure that both people are invested. If you're there's a difference. I go in and I get a workout, and workouts are fun. You want to go to a max challenge or a spin class. I have a great friend of mine who's a spin instructor. I have a blast when I take his class. Is his class the best physiological thing for my program and my goals? Probably not, but I have a blast when I go. And so that is a workout. That's a different thing than if I'm going to get a program, right? If someone gives you at the hair salon or at a dinner party, they give you, hey, you should try this supplement, or hey, you should try this food. That's not a meal program or a nutritional program. That's an advice for foods that you can try. There's a big difference between the two, right? And so being able to understand the difference in that, and if you're not getting a program and not understanding that person is telling you, here's where you are, here's where you want to be, here's what's holding you back from being here, here's how we're going to systematically eliminate those weak links, here's what's going to be expected of you, here's what you can expect of me. That's going to be the process. And if you find somebody who walks you through like that, okay, stay there and don't and listen to everything they say, because they're going to lead you down the path where you need to go. But if they're giving you just workouts and they're just giving you things that you could go get on your own, then run and hide. Then you are going to make money.
Yeah, or just concede that you're like only using them as accountability. But it's so good for everybody to see that it can be this good. There should be a like of your trainer. There should be this, like, through this conversation with you and it could be really exciting to hire you and know that there's this promise of we'll really work together, we'll get somewhere, and there should be a relationship. And if there's not, same to your point, go find somebody else. You don't have to just stick with the first person that you finally got up the gall to go call, so.
And if you're only going, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you're only going for if you're only going for, hey, I'm going to go because that's the only way I'll work out, I'm going to tell you right now, I've been that guy and it never works. That works a little longer than having nobody, but not much, not enough to make a dent and move the needle in the long haul. So with that, there needs to be a little bit more than that. There needs to be where, and this is, we actually talked about this in our initial email exchange, is that just giving you a workout is just giving you a fish, right? Like the old proverb. And if you need to come to me for the fish every time, I not only will I tell you as the client that will eventually wear away, right? I'm going to tell you as the coach, and that it will wear me down. That if I'm only here for workouts, I'm only here to give you fish. Right? Because it's like, you know what? Go to the fish store yourself. Like, why do you need me? The ultimate is where I teach you how to fish, so I become obsolete. So you don't need me, right? And that's really what my goal is. And the ironic thing is that the more I've done that, the more I have people been training with me for 10 years, 15 years, because they always want to see what's behind the next door. What can I accomplish next?
Yeah.
And so, and that is limitless. I have, like I said, professional athletes that still have not scratched their potential, because we just keep going through the checklist and finding new things that we're going to go and keep going deeper down the rabbit hole of things we can discover, and more new things they become aware of, and how it all connects to what they want to do and who they want to be. And so that's really where that journey can take you. But it has to be that process of, like, if you're not getting empowered to do this yourself and understanding that you are ultimately responsible, then that's not going to last. I'd like to tell you different, but I've done it too long, and I've been that guy, and it wears both of you down.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And kind of as we're wrapping up here, we have New Year's around the corner. If you could wrap your arms around our listeners and just give them some of your best advice, knowing where we are in the year and what's to come, what would that look like?
So I'm going to give you one more book, The Power of Habits. Okay. And talking about that, this is all about habits. All right. Your movement is a habit. Your nutrition is a habit. Your sleep is a habit. And you just have developed these, most of it subconsciously. And all of this is about establishing habits. It is not about that I'm going to go, and I've been there and done that, where I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and drink raw eggs and listen to the Rocky soundtrack, and I'm going to accomplish it all today. And that doesn't last either. And so with that, you have to, if you don't have a purpose and understand, like I said, here's my end goal. Where do I want to get to? And some people don't even have that. They just say, I want to lose weight. Well, how much weight? And then if I tell people, what if you didn't lose a pound, but you looked exactly the way you wanted to look? Would you care? No. Okay. So then what's going to be our metric then? We need to set the goalpost or the scoreboard as to know what it is exactly, so you have a tangible thing to look for. So if it's because most people just don't get beyond the surface level. And so if I wanted to change my body composition and look better, then okay, what's going to be my metric? Is that one pair of jeans? Is it my waistline? Is it going to be and weight is probably the crappiest version of metric for that. But what is going to be my finish line? And then from there, what is the systematic steps I need to get there? And that if you want to lose, 6 inches off your waist, you got to lose 1 before you can lose 6. And so what do I have to do today to get towards that first inch? And you're not going to get all 6 at once. And so establishing those habits, and the more you can establish habits that you can accomplish each day, and then you can start layering multiple habits. When you get up at 6 a.m. and drink the raw eggs and listen to Rocky soundtrack and try to conquer the world, that's trying to stack a bunch of different habits at once. And that's just not how we learn. That's not how we function as humans. And so if you change one habit initially, and then just keep those things, and then realize that if you can keep those things, that the holidays aren't going to make that much of a dent, right? You're really talking about 4 days that people let ruin their whole year. If you can establish those habits now that are non-negotiable, just say, this is part of what I do. And if I'm going to give it away for a day or two, go give it away. Have fun, enjoy it, have whatever you want to have. Just understand I got to make up for it someplace else, right? That I'm going to cash in that ticket today, but that's my ticket for the week. And I'm going to make it up someplace else where I'm going to not do, like I say, don't eat a bucket of ice cream on a Tuesday night, right? Because that's not how we get the habits to where we want to be. So establish where you want to end up, what are going to be your milestones, what are going to be your clear-cut markers, and then what are going to be your non-negotiable habits that are going to get you on those steps, because that's ultimately what it is. The program, as much as I teach an 8-hour course on programming, the program doesn't matter unless you have the habits and that established. That's what creates the fertile soil.
So good. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom today. I feel like it's just so perfect heading us into 2022, which is crazy to even talk about. And I will put all of your contact information in the show notes. Any last words of wisdom for us before we sign off?
We packed a lot in here, and I'm being from Jersey, I talk fast, so it's probably a lot for people to soak in. But if we ever want to do this again, what we can do is we could spend the entire time talking about the one thread that connects all of it, and it's not what people think. It's breathing. Okay, so that'll be my teaser. Breathing. That'll be my teaser for now, because when we talk about my 3 buckets of reset, move, and fuel, breathing is the one thing, the one dot that connects to all of it. And there's so much. And if there's any one thing that I've gathered as much information and as much value from in the last 10 years plus, and what has changed how I approach training is breathing. And so that'll be my teaser, and that's my I'll plant that seed to come back another time, and we'll just riff on breathing and give you all the different resources and realize just how impactful it is at so many levels.
All right, well done. We'll do it. 2022, okay. You're back.
All right. You set the date and I'll be there.
Perfect. Thank you again, Eric.
Thank you.